Myths, legends, nightmares. We are told they are the fantasies of primitive minds. The children's stories used to explain a world our ancestors could not understand. The Kraken, the Cyclops, the Griffin, the dragon. We are told they are symbols, metaphors, warnings. But what if they are not metaphors at all? What if they are memories? A quick advisory before we begin. The following episode explores theories that connect mythology to scientific fact. These interpretations, proposed by respected researchers, exist at the edge of our current understanding. They are presented here to encourage thought, debate, and exploration. The journey to the truth always begins with a question. For centuries, we have drawn a hard line between history and mythology. History is the realm of facts, of evidence, of carbon dating and archaeology. Mythology is the realm of fiction, of gods and monsters. But this line is beginning to blur. A new generation of researchers, paleontologists, marine biologists, and geneticists are looking back at these ancient fictions with new eyes. They are proposing a radical hypothesis, a hypothesis known as euhemerism, or myth as memory. The idea is simple. Our ancestors were not fools. They were precise observers. When they encountered something that defied their understanding, a colossal squid washed ashore, a bizarre, beaked skull in the desert, or the bones of giants buried in the earth. They did not invent a fantasy. They recorded what they saw in the only language they had. These myths are not lies. They are corrupted data files, fragmented, distorted, and encrypted. But they are files of real events, real creatures, and real encounters. Today, we are unlocking 5 of these files. We are peeling back the veil of mythology to find the astonishing, forgotten science hidden beneath. We begin in the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic. For 1,000 years, Norse and Scandinavian sailors spoke of a monster, a creature so large, it was often mistaken for a living island, a beast that could pull the largest longships down to the depths with its colossal arms. They called it the Kraken. For centuries, science dismissed this. It was a sailor's yarn, a fish story told by drunken men to scare recruits. The ocean was vast, yes, but it did not contain monsters. Sir Richard Owen, one of the most famous biologists of the 19th century, called it a fabulous creature, a biological impossibility. But the sailors kept seeing it. In 1861, the French gunboat Electon encountered a monstrous, slimy-bodied creature. The captain, Lieutenant Frederick Bouillet, ordered his men to open fire. They shot cannons at it. They tried to haul its massive, pulsating body on board, but its own weight caused it to tear apart. They were only able to retrieve a single, massive piece of its fin before the rest of it sank back into the abyss. They had proof, a physical sample. But still, science refused to believe. It was written off as an unusually large squid, a fluke. The Kraken remained a myth until the 21st century, until we finally built eyes that could pierce the darkness. In 2004, Japanese scientists Tsunami Kubodera and Kyoichi Mori filmed the impossible. There it was, Architeuthis dux, the giant squid, a creature over 40 feet long, with the largest eyes of any animal on Earth, living in the crushing pressure, 1 to 1,000 meters down. It was real. It had always been real, and it wasn't even the biggest. Science would soon discover Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, the colossal squid, a heavier, more powerful hunter with swiveling, razor-sharp hooks on its tentacles. The sailors hadn't been exaggerating. If anything, they had understated the truth. The Kraken was not a myth. It was a species. The Kraken was a monster of the deep. A creature of flesh and blood, mistaken for a demon. But our next creature was not a living animal. It was a prophecy, made of stone and bone. A creature that, in Greek legend, guarded the very gates of the underworld. In Homer's Odyssey, the hero Odysseus becomes trapped in a cave. The cave's inhabitant is a monster, a Cyclops, a giant, man-eating shepherd with a single, terrifying eye in the center of his forehead. For millennia, we assumed this was pure fantasy, a story invented by Homer to test his hero's wits. But what if Homer, or the storytellers who came before him, were just describing what they found in that cave? The question, as the paleontologist Othenio Abel asked in 1914, is not, what is a Cyclops, but what has 4 limbs, lives in a cave, and has one giant hole in the middle of its skull? The answer is an elephant. The islands of Crete, Cyprus, and Sicily were once home to entire populations of prehistoric dwarf elephants. When these animals died, their bones were often preserved in the island's many caves. To an ancient Greek who had never seen an elephant, what would this skull look like? They wouldn't see the 2 small, recessed eye sockets. They would see the massive, terrifying, central hole, the eye. They would see the giant, thick leg bones. They would conclude, quite rationally, that they had found the remains of a one-eyed giant. The myth was not an invention. It was a scientific theory, made by ancient paleontologists. They found the evidence, and they did their best to explain it. The Cyclops was real. It was just misunderstood. The Greeks mistook a single, bizarre skull for a monster. But what happens when an entire civilization, thousands of miles away, finds thousands of bones, not in caves, but scattered across a vast desert, bones that seem to belong to a creature that guards gold? We travel now, east, to the ancient land of Scythia, modern-day Central Asia. The Scythians were nomadic warriors, and they told stories to the Greeks of a fabulous creature that lived in the mountains. A beast with the body of a lion, the head and wings of an eagle, and sharp, terrifying talons. This creature, the Griffin, was said to build its nests on the ground, and it guarded the veins of gold that ran through the desert. For centuries, this was considered the classic example of mythology, a composite creature, a fantasy. Then, in the 1920s, American explorer Roy Chapman Andrews led an expedition into the Gobi Desert. He was searching for the origins of humanity. He didn't find human ancestors, but he found something else. He found a place he named the Flaming Cliffs, and it was filled with dinosaurs. He had found Protoceratops, a dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period. This region, the Gobi Desert, is one of the richest fossil beds on Earth. And, as historian and folklorist Adrian Mayer has pointed out, it is also the exact location where the Scythians told the Greeks they were finding gold. Think about it. The Scythians were not paleontologists, but they were observers. They found these skeletons all the time, right next to the gold they were seeking. They saw a 4-legged animal with a beak. They saw its nest, full of eggs. They concluded, rationally, that this must be a lion bird, a griffin. The griffin was not a fantasy. It was the world's first and most accurate paleontological reconstruction. The Scythians were not myth makers. They were the original dinosaur hunters. The Scythians found bones. And from them, they built a legend. But what if the legend isn't about bones at all? What if it's about a creature every single culture on Earth remembers? A creature that has a different name in China, in Europe, in Mesoamerica, but one universal form. A creature we call the dragon. This is the great mystery. Why the dragon? Why are these giant lizards so deeply embedded in our collective human psyche? From the beginning of recorded history, we have been obsessed with them. The standard explanation? That dragons are a composite of our primal fears: the snake, the eagle, and the lion. But this explanation is weak. It's too abstract. The myth as memory hypothesis offers a much more terrifying and much more likely answer. We remember dragons because we met them. In China, a connection is explicit. For thousands of years, dragon bones, which we now know are dinosaur fossils, have been ground up and used in traditional medicine. The Chinese didn't need to invent dragons. They were finding their skeletons constantly. But what if the memory is fresher? What if it's not about fossils, but about encounters? When the first humans arrived in Australia around 65,000 years ago, it was a different world. It was a world ruled by Megalania, a 7-meter long, 1,900 kilogram, venomous, monitor, lizard, a real-life dragon humans coexisted with and were hunted by. This creature for thousands of years. In New Zealand, it was the Haast's eagle, a bird with a 10-foot wingspan powerful enough to swoop down and carry off a human child. In Europe, it might have been the last remaining quincana, a terrestrial land crocodile. The dragon is not one myth. It is a single, global archetype. It is the fragmented, cultural memory of a time when Homo sapiens were not the apex predator. A time when we were prey. We didn't invent the dragon. We are the ones who survived it. The dragon was the memory of a real predator, a monster we fought. But our final myth is the most profound and the most disturbing of all. It's not about a monster we fought. It's about a person we met. A different kind of human. There were giants in the earth in those days. The Nephilim. The Greeks had their Titans. The Norse had their Jotun. The frost giants. Virtually every culture on Earth has a foundational myth of a race of powerful, giant-like humanoids who lived before us. Like the dragon, we dismiss this as a primal archetype, a metaphor for the forces of nature, earthquakes, volcanoes, and storms, until 2008. In that Siberian cave, scientists found a single, tiny, fossilized bone, a fragment from the pinky finger of a child. It was too small to be analyzed physically, so they analyzed it. Genetically, they sequenced its DNA. The result changed everything we thought we knew about our past. The DNA did not belong to us. It did not belong to a Neanderthal. It was something new, a third, distinct, human species. We call them the Denisovans. And when we analyzed that DNA, we found they were not like us. They were robust, massive, built for the cold. Their genomes suggested a physical size that would have dwarfed a modern human. For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors shared the planet with these other humans. We met them. We traded with them. We interbred with them. Many modern humans carry Denisovan DNA right now, but we also fought them. What would that memory, the memory of a different, stronger, larger species of human, look like? After 50,000 years of retelling, it would look, they tell you, like a giant. It would look like an ogre. It would look like the Nephilim. The myths of giants are not myths at all. They are the fragmented, cultural obituary for our lost human cousins. The Kraken was the giant squid. The Cyclops was the dwarf elephant. The Griffin was the Protoceratops. The dragon was the memory of Megalania. The giants were the Denisovans. Narrator: science and mythology are not two different subjects. They are the same subject. They are the story of humanity, trying to understand its own past. The myths are not fantasies. They are the first draft of history. Here at 0 Point Lore, we believe this first draft of history is the most important story ever told. We believe the past is a puzzle, and the myths are the missing pieces. We want to know what you think. Of these 5 creatures, which one do you believe holds the most profound truth? And what myth should we investigate next? Let us know in the comments below. For centuries, we have been told that we are the masters of this world. The sole, intelligent, rational species. But the myths tell a different story. They tell of a world that was older, stranger, and more dangerous than we have ever been taught. They are not just stories. They are the echoes of the world that came before. And they are proof that we were never, ever alone.